Is imagination simply contained in the mind? Or does it tap into an unseen world with messages waiting to be told? There is a place where legends cross over into our world, where strange visions and whispers beckon, and superstition takes hold. Step into the Black Cat's shadow.
Welcome back to the Black Cat Shadow. Join us as we take a closer look at the cases of the strange and unexplained from all over the world and how they inspire some of our favorite horror movies. My name is Andy, and I'm one of your hosts podcasting from Kansas City, Missouri.
And I'm Dakota. I am coming from Olathe, Kansas.
So in episode 24, we're talking about the state of Idaho. And, I think everybody's heard of Idaho, right? Yeah. Anyway, maybe we even have some listeners out there. I don't know. But, this was it was kind of a hard state to look into. There's lots of Native American legends and things like that. There's some folklore to it. There's some history. There's not a lot of modern day urban legends and going on in Idaho. So it was a little bit of a challenge for us to find some interesting stuff. Maybe a reason for that we couldn't find a whole lot is the fact that some people believe that Idaho doesn't even exist. Yeah, this is one of those conspiracy theories that kind of makes you go, what? But, I guess it kind of makes sense if you think about it. Who's ever been to Idaho? I haven't. Have you, Dakota?
I drove through Idaho on my way to Montana. We had to make a stop. I've heard this legend before. I never believed it just because I've driven through the state, so I know it exists.
Okay.
I can see the border right there.
Or are you part of the conspiracy?
I don't know. The government doesn't pay me, so.
I guess now I know somebody that's been in Idaho, but the believers or unbelievers, I guess we should say, they think that the state was added to maps so Utah wouldn't think they were bordering Canada, and also so Washington and Montana wouldn't realize they were neighbors, which really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Maybe there's some interesting history between those states that I don't know about. But others believe that if you think you've been to Idaho, they think that you've been part of a covert government mind control experiment. So I don't know, Dakota. Maybe you've had somebody tinker around with your brain.
I'm pretty sure that they have. I mean, you never know with the government. But I mean, I'd be sitting there one day and I'd be hearing weird transmissions in my head. I don't know. They might be the Russians.
Yeah, it's always the Russians. And people that live in Idaho, they may or may not be part of the conspiracy as well, but they do believe that Idaho has been the site of some many government experiments, kind of like the experiment where they added fluoride to the water. It started in Lewiston in 1947, and that was thought to be a mind control experiment. In the late 90s, there was a case of this strange material that fell from the sky. It was kind of like a fiber material. The material was tested to see if it was toxic, but it actually came back as non-toxic. But around the same time, there was a small outbreak of collapsed lungs, so that doesn't sound good. And birds have been falling out of the sky for some strange reason too in Idaho. In June of 2015, there was a road in Kuna, Idaho that was covered in dead birds. And in March of that same year, there was also a flock of geese that dropped dead to the ground. Some believe a government research program called HAARP, that's HAARP, or High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, located in Alaska, has caused things like this to happen. The purpose for this research was to develop technology for radio communication and surveillance. They had a high-power radio transmitter they would use to send high-power radio waves into the ionosphere just for fun to see what would happen. Conspiracy theorists believe that this program had the ability to manipulate weather. So, for instance, weaponizing the weather to cause droughts and floods and other chaos to whoever they wanted. There's actually also a lot of Bigfoot sightings in Idaho, but many believe that the government is also covering this up because the creature may be a result of yet another government experiment gone wrong there. And there may also be something strange living in the Paiute Lake in Idaho. In 1920, settlers at McCall, Idaho saw what they thought was a log starting to move in the lake. In August 1944, this large serpent type thing was seen by several groups of people, and they described it as like 30 to 35 feet long, with a dinosaur head with humps like a camel and had like a shell-like skin on it. In September of 1946, 20 people saw the serpent again. A doctor in the group said it was between 30 to 40 feet long and kept diving into the water, leaving a small wake like a motorboat. In 1954, the creature was named. The editor of the Star News held a contest to name the serpent of Paiute Lake. Or is it Paiute? I don't know. Anyway, the winning name was Charlie, which was inspired by the catchphrase of Jack Pearl's old-time radio show. There have been a dozen sightings since then, with the last being in 2002. Native Americans in the area believe an evil spirit dwells in the lake. There's also another lake monster reported in Idaho, and the Lake Pend Oreille. It's the 5th deepest lake in the U.S. The creature is said to be 20 feet long. Not much of a description is given for it, mainly people just seeing something large moving up and down and swimming. The first sighting was in the 40s, and then more in the 70s. In September 1977, a strange creature attacked a young girl near Sandpoint City Beach. That's when journalists named it the Pend Oreille Paddler. In 1984, a college professor from North Idaho College led an expedition to the lake. The investigation was very publicized, named CryptoQuest 84. The conclusion was that everyone was seeing a large prehistoric-looking sturgeon fish. The U.S. Navy actually admitted to using the deep end of the lake for submarine research. Also, the International Submarine Engineering Group from Canada used the lake to test a mini-sub in the 60s. Could these more mundane explanations be the explanations for what people saw? Who knows? According to another strange legend in Idaho, the Owyhee Mountains are home to a race of cannibalistic dwarves. That's right, cannibalistic dwarves. The story goes back to when the Bannock and Shoshone Indians told early trappers about dwarves with long tails, and they would hide these tails by wrapping them around their body. The dwarves would lure children into the mountains and then eat them. Then they would mimic like a baby's cry or the child's cry and lure the parents or other people there as well and eat them. And even though they were small creatures, they were supposedly able to carry elk on their backs. But I couldn't find anything about any like modern day sightings of these dwarves. Peter Jackson probably got them all to be in the Lord of the Rings movies, and so they got to retire after that.
Jesus. Okay, so we talked about that. We talked about killer hobbits in Utah, and now we're talking about cannibalistic dwarves in Idaho. I think something's wrong with the west side of the United States. I have no idea how to respond to that.
Yeah, it's I think Sci-Fi Channel needs to get out there and make a movie.
Hey, yeah. Speaking of, I don't know if I told you, but me and Dave are actually talking about writing this movie, this script for this Killer Hobbits movie.
No way.
There's not a lot. Yeah, we are talking about it. I'm starting to do some rough drafts right now, some like ideas, but I mean, there's not a lot to go off of with the mythology, just because it was a stupid little story about. It's just some stupid little story, and that's all it was. And it gained like this cult following. And so I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna change it up, and we're gonna make it a little darker, but still it's gonna be campy. Obviously, I mean you can't not make a campy movie about killer hobbits.
I know. Now you gotta, and you gotta sex it up a little bit, and you got to hit it on your hands there.
I think I'm gonna put a very risque scene, like a killer hobbit orgy, blood-soaked hobbit orgy. That'd be the best thing that I could possibly do.
Oh boy, here we go. Sounds great.
It's only the beginning, but something else I kind of just popped up on Ranker here. So that same county you're talking about with the dwarves, apparently there's a ghost stallion, but it's supposedly one of their it's a mythical hero, and apparently they have a lot of them in Idaho, but I mean, I'm not finding anything else about these heroes. But apparently, a great white stallion and its herd of phantom horses are said to appear from the rifts in the clouds whenever there is a farmer or cowboy in danger. That is actually really cool. It kind of sounds like, you know, the Johnny Cash song "Ghost Riders in the Sky."
Maybe.
All right, well, it sounds very reminiscent, but in that song, this cowboy's out on riding in the desert, and he can hear this thundering, and he looks up and he sees these ghosts riding across the sky on their horses. Well, they're condemned spirits, and that they're condemned to ride the skies forever, chasing the devil's herd.
Okay, yeah. Now that you mention it, that Johnny Cash song does sound kind of familiar. But yeah, that I don't know. Like, if I saw a ghost horse like running towards me, I don't know if I would be scared or relieved.
I don't know. I mean, in the West and in the plains, anywhere in the plains, honestly, horses are seen as a sign of good luck, fortune, and life. I mean, like Native Americans, they see one of their spirits, one of their great spirits as a great white horse. But I mean, we look back into like the biblical mythology. Who rides the white stallion? Death rides
Jesus.
the white stallion.
Oh yeah.
Yep. I'm talking about Revelations here, buddy.
Oh yeah. I guess I'm getting that confused with my Jesus painting that I have. You know, Jesus riding the great white stallion here. I don't know.
Yeah, but in Revelations, it mentions a great white stallion, and astride the stallion is the being of death. So I can see kind of both sides. So, but in the United States, we always look at things backwards, anyways. So I don't know, but it's actually a really cool story about the horses. I like it, but
yeah.
There's a lot of really interesting, like, just more natural stories, more natural myths and everything than there are just like of people or creatures. Like when I was reading The Legend of Spirit Lake, apparently, according to I don't have no idea how to say that, Kootenai Indian legend, one of the maids from that tribe fell in love with a brave warrior, and when a chieftain of a tribe hostile to the Kootenays threatened war if he was not allowed to marry the maid, her and the brave they tied their wrists together as a symbol of love, and they jumped off a cliff into Spirit Lake. And the cliff, oddly enough, is named Suicide Cliff. So,
oh yeah.
I mean, it's very Romeo and Juliet like. But apparently, you can go out to the lake and you can hear the mournful cries floating up from the water.
Okay.
And then some have claimed on a moonlit night, you can see gliding across the lake, the two in a phantom canoe, which, I mean, it's cool. I mean,
yeah,
it's just these stories. There's not a lot to go off of. I mean, a lot of the stories are mainly just Native American spirits and stories of just creatures that they've encountered.
Yeah, they're good campfire stories. They're the stories that you tell around the campfire, and they're interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's anything worth making a movie out of, but
oh no, it doesn't hold a candle to cannibalistic or rabid hobbits. That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Idaho's got some really beautiful like folk tales and Native American type legend stuff, and they also have some pretty freaky true crime as well. There's a couple that I saw. There's a theater in Lewiston. It's called the Lewiston Civic Theater, and it's said to be haunted with apparitions regularly spotted and things moving on their own. But maybe even scarier is the case of the disappearance of Stephen Pearsall, Christina Nelson, and Brandy Miller. Pearsall was last seen at the Lewiston Civic Theater on September 14th, 1982. He was the janitor there and was dropped off there that night so he could do some laundry and practice his clarinet. He was never heard from again. Pearsall was a former U.S. Air Force corporal. He left his clarinet behind at the theater, which was totally not like him, according to his friends. And he also left his car parked at his friend's house and an uncashed paycheck at his apartment. And stepsisters Christina Nelson and Brandy Miller also went missing that same night. They were last seen leaving Nelson's apartment to go to a grocery store. They just lived a few blocks from Pearsall's apartment, and the path they had to take would have made them pass the theater on their way. Christina Nelson used to be the janitor at the theater, and Pearsall replaced her when she quit. Nelson and Miller's bodies were found in a canyon in Kendrick, Idaho 2 years after they disappeared, and their murders were never solved. Police think it's possible the two sets of disappearances could be linked, and that Pearsall might have witnessed the women's murders and was killed as well. There was a person of interest in the cases, but there was never enough evidence to arrest the person. So that's kind of creepy to know that the person is still out there that did that. And there's also a house in Boise known as the Murder House. The reason why is the 1987 murder of Preston Muir. That day, the neighbors woke up and they found a trail of blood on their front door and on their front porch, and it led down the street to the house of Preston Muir. Muir was shot and cut up into 13 pieces. The next week, his body parts started reappearing over 100 miles away in the Brownlee Reservoir. Police captured the killers and got the rest of the story. Apparently, Muir was in his basement with the two men that killed him for some still unknown reason, and an argument started, and Muir was shot in the shoulder. Muir was able to run to the neighbor's house to try to get help, but the two attackers dragged him back to his house, leaving the trail of blood that was later discovered. His neighbor so he was banging on the door, I guess, and awoke the neighbor up. So the neighbor actually witnessed Muir being dragged down the street, and they called 911. And so the killers, they forced Muir back down into the basement and shot him in the head. This history has made the house popular for true crime buffs and the paranormal crowd. So, anytime a location is associated with some kind of murder or tragedy, it quickly becomes known as being haunted, whether people have actually experienced anything there or not.
Well, there was I was reading something about that murder house. Apparently, people have seen a silhouette of a woman dressed in 19th century clothes, which, if you know anything about the 19th century, it wasn't much of a difference. We're from the 18th century, which was which technically ended in 1790, which is when it began. The 18th century began in 1790 and ended in 1890. So, we kind of jumped to the early 1900s, which, people wore kind of what they wore at the end of the 1800s. So, I wouldn't be surprised if that house was built around that time and somebody died in it.
Yeah, I don't know how soon people started settling out west there in Idaho.
Well, obviously the real big thing was the California Gold Rush, is when people started settling out west. Settlements started popping up all along the way at that time. So we really never know. I'm pretty sure that Idaho was a state by 1910. So I'm pretty sure it's possible that maybe somebody found a house was built out there, or something, or even a farmstead was built out there that had, it would have been modern, I guess you would say, because the 19th century would have been pretty modern.
Yeah, so that takes us into our movie review for this episode, and we had a hard time finding, any horror movies that were based on anything in Idaho or actually filmed in Idaho. So we actually found a movie that interested us on Netflix. It's called The Windmill from 2016.
Welcome with Happy Holland Tours. Got a ticket? Ladies and gentlemen, without windmills, there would be no Holland. More than half of Holland lies under sea level. Unbelievable. Well, the bus doesn't start. Let the motor calm down a little bit.
There are no windmills marked anywhere near here.
So?
Well, what's that then?
What's the legend?
Miller sells his soul to the devil for the secret of keeping his blades turning wind or no wind.
The Windmill was directed by Nick Youngeris. Not sure how you pronounce that. And he also directed The Red Room of 2014. He produced Frankenstein's Army in 2013 and the Dutch film Dead End in 2006. The story was also by Nick Youngeris and Chris W. Mitchell. Chris W. Mitchell also wrote Frankenstein's Army in 2013 and The Pool in 2014 and Susskind in 2012. As far as the cast goes, there was only one actor that I really recognized, and that was a guy named Noah Taylor. And you may not know him by the name, but I think when most people see his face, they'll probably recognize it. Do you know who I'm talking about, Dakota?
Yeah, he's actually been on a lot of stuff. He's not really the kind of actor who plays like his own major role. He's more of a supporting actor.
Yeah,
which is great. But he's a great actor in his own right. Just because the type of character he always plays is this more quiet, reserved character who's got some sort of little quirk about him. Which, I mean, he seems like a quirky kind of guy, anyways. So it works.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I mean he's been in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. He was in the Tomb Raider movies, and he's also in Edge of Tomorrow.
I think he was also in another movie very similar to Edge of Tomorrow. It was more of a post-apocalyptic type movie. I think it was like a vampire type movie, I think.
Oh, okay.
It might have been like Ultraviolet or something. Hey, he was in Game of Thrones. That's interesting.
Oh yeah.
That's one of my favorite shows. I can't get over that show.
Oh yeah, I've never seen it.
Oh, it's great. Another one that probably was big for him was The Life Aquatic. That movie was incredible.
Yeah, it's another one that I have yet to see too. Is that like a Wes Anderson movie?
Yeah, it is, I think. Let's see. He played Adolf Hitler in a movie called Max.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Okay, so some of the names of the movies he's been in are kind of funny. Like, here's one. He died with a falafel in his hand.
I wonder what that movie's about.
Probably somebody dying with a falafel in their hand.
Yeah, it's like falafel. What kind of food is that? Is that like Mediterranean or something?
It's more. I think it's Middle Eastern. It sounds Middle Eastern to me because falafel is falafel. I know it has something to do with steak.
Okay. Oh, hey, if there could be worse ways to die than eating a steak.
Yeah. Well. I don't know. But I mean, yeah, he's the only one notable. I mean, I think that Charlotte Beaumont, who played Jennifer in the movie, I think she's been in some other stuff, but mainly it's been foreign. Because she's I don't think is she Australian herself? Because she plays an Australian in the movie.
No, she's actually English.
Yeah, she was born in Watford, Hertfordshire.
Yeah, that place.
Yeah, that place.
Yeah, I mean she was in it. Looks like she was in a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. She was in the Jupiter Ascending, that sci-fi movie with Channing Tatum or Tatum Channing. How the heck do you say that?
Channing Tatum.
Yeah, Channing Tatum.
Channing Tatum.
And crap, and then the girl from That 70s Show. I can't remember her name now.
Oh yeah, Mila Kunis.
Yeah, Kelso's girlfriend. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
So she was in those movies. So yeah, I mean she's been in some other things. Yeah, usually a lot of like European type movies. It looks like.
Yeah, another supporting character. He's the Japanese guy that Tanro Ishida. He actually this is like his first major role in a movie, I think, because everything else I've looked at he was in, he mainly does voice acting. But he did play a part in 47 Ronin. It was a very minor role, but I mean that is a major movie, I guess.
Oh yeah, it's got Keanu Reeves in it.
Yeah, but I mean that movie was great. You gotta admit.
Oh yeah, I still haven't seen that one either.
Oh, you got to watch it. But yeah, the cast is. I liked the cast. They meshed very well.
Yeah, I think they meshed well. I want to go over the synopsis or the plot real quick. So basically, the movie begins with a young woman named Jessica, who apparently is on the run from the police, and we find this out when the father of the kid she's a nanny to discovers her fake passports with different names on them. So rather than explain all this to the police, she makes her escape, and then we're also introduced to a series of other people. We see a Japanese man spreading his grandmother's ashes at a city fountain, or I think it's a fountain, I'm not sure, some kind of water thing in the middle of the city. There's a group of men taking their friend to the red light district, and things don't go so good there, and so the friend is now like on the run, trying to lay low until they leave the country. We're introduced to a father and son who are on vacation, and a photographer who gets her first photo gig taking windmill pictures for a tourist calendar. There's also a doctor that seems to have a lot on his mind. And so, all these various characters, for one reason or another, they get on the same bus to take a windmill tour of Holland. During the tour, the bus breaks down. And, of course, it strands the group on a remote road with a windmill that they can see turning in the distance. And they pretty quickly realize that they are not alone there, that there is a killer in the woods. And so the killer makes himself known pretty soon after the bus breaks down. Dakota, what are kind of your initial thoughts on the movie?
Well, going into it, I didn't expect much. It being a Netflix, like it was a video on demand movie. It started off here in the United States, so I didn't think much of it. But when the movie started off, it started off in a weird way. It was unheard of for movies to start off that way, where it was kind of flashes and text, and that kind of intrigued me starting off. And getting into the movie, I started seeing these, like, the characters there's a variety of characters, obviously. Each one has a different background. Like the Australian, Jennifer was the Australian girl. Obviously, it was cool seeing that. And then the British, the Dutch bus driver character, the British doctor, the French photographer, the Japanese guy. It was cool seeing all these different demographics in this one area, because it started off in Amsterdam. And if you know anything about Amsterdam, it pretty much anything's legal in Amsterdam.
Oh, okay. Never
so
been
it's weird seeing. Yeah, I've never been there either, but it's weird seeing this group of people all kind of congregating in Amsterdam. But I mean, Amsterdam is a hub for travel in that part of Europe, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
But the story, it pretty much almost like throws you in immediately, kind of like getting the basis for the story is everyone's like kind of running from their past, which is great. Movies that kind of trigger that emotional side, like where people can run from their past but they can't escape the end outcome, no matter what it is. Because if you keep running and don't face it, it's going to catch up to you. It kind of played on the psychological effects, which I really liked. Not a lot of movies where it's an obvious slasher film, which this is almost like a slasher film. It's built very much like one. It's very rare to see psychological effects in a slasher film, but I mean it's really refreshing. I mean I don't think I can get over how well it was executed.
Yeah, and for me, like, I don't know, I heard some good reviews of the movie, so I guess my expectations were a little bit higher maybe going into it. But yeah, I thought all the different characters were interesting. There wasn't a whole lot of, there was a little bit of depth to them, but not a whole lot. But that's fine. I mean, like you said, this is a slasher movie. We're not going to be watching this movie for character development or things like that. Because hopefully the characters won't last long enough to be developed. But I did like this movie, because I love slasher movies, so I had that going for it. And I did really like the folklore attached to the killer. I thought that was interesting. And I thought the acting was good. I mean, and that the actors all meshed well together. And there was one or two jump scares that did get me. The killer was pretty creepy. You know, I didn't think there was any like downtime to this movie. Like you said, it picks up and it just keeps going throughout the whole movie. And the windmill sets, the sets look good. The windmill looks good that they're in, and the other shed or whatever they're in looks good. The special effects are pretty good. I couldn't tell. I imagine there was probably some CGI in there, but I couldn't really tell which was CGI, which was practical. Which I guess that's a good thing. There was some decent gore. There was quite a few decent kills in this one. They did a good job on the makeup of the killer. You know, it reminded me of Cropsy from The Burning. And like you said, the definite theme of this movie was your sins will find you out, and they might just affect those that you care about as well. You know, I guess it gives you something to think about there. And, you know, clocking in at just an hour and 25 minutes, I felt like it was just short enough to where, you know, it gives you a decent flick. You know, it's not too long. Is there anything you did not like about it?
Okay, yeah, the very first kill in the movie, when Jack, is that what his name? Jackson or whatever?
Jackson,
yeah. The very first kill in the movie where he gets his like calves chopped off and he falls straight down. I was expecting more. I was expecting him to be bisected from the thighs down. But I mean, it makes sense when you see the effects. Spoiler alert! I gotta reveal this just one little part to get my point across. Jackson, he's a soldier. He's from the Royal Marines. Well, when he goes to the red light district, he accidentally kills a prostitute because of his flashbacks. So the very first thing he sees, for the psychological effects I was talking about, he sees her stalking. So it makes sense the way he gets killed. It just doesn't come across like obviously. I don't like how they didn't make it obvious, the fact that that's what it was. And that's why he was chopped at the legs. I mean, if they would have done a little bit better, like bisected him from like like I said, his thighs down, it would have made sense. But the blood spewing out kind of shocked me a little bit. I was like, it didn't look like real blood. It kind of set me up thinking that the rest of the movie was going to be kind of a cheesy gore fest instead. But it changed. It really did change. I think they went in the right direction that way, kind of giving you this little like kind of a tease at first, and then the dude's head getting squashed. That part, it was like, dude, really?
Yeah, no, I thought that kill was good. You know, it's decent effects.
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for that kill would have ruined it for me. If it wasn't for the fact that he got his head like curb stomped, that's what gave me a little bit more excitement for it. Yeah, but the body count in this movie is pretty impressive.
Yeah, without going into spoiler territory, there's several deaths. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it's you expect that with a slasher film.
Oh yeah.
The greatest part, I think the greatest part about it was the fact that this movie is very reminiscent for Jeepers Creepers for me, which was one of the very first horror movies I ever seen. So I was like, this seems really familiar. A group of people on a bus, you know, they're driving around, seeing the sights, and all of a sudden, this scary creature thing just pops out of nowhere. And the trench coat and the face makeup really did set me on a whirlwind of memories, you know?
Yeah, I could see that resemblance, definitely. He definitely had kind of the creeper look to him, and the way he moved and killed people. Definitely similar to that.
Yeah, what did you think about his scythe, though?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that scythe is pretty badass. I like the scythe, and I liked how he had the chains, the hooks on the chains. The weapons were incredible.
No, there's without giving anything away, there's a really cool kill where he uses that hook on the chain. That was one of the parts that made me jump too, because it just came out of nowhere.
Yeah, but I mean, if all in all, I mean, there's not much I didn't like about it. I have to give them props for. I'm not a fan. I'm not really a fan of the European horror movies, but I mean, I'll give them props on this.
I was trying to think, so this movie, while it was kind of creepy and it had some jump scares, I don't know if it was like super scary. I think, you know, the hardcore horror fan, they're probably not going to get scared by this. And I think the the cinematography was kind of surprised me. There was nothing too like earth-shattering with the cinematography. I was expecting there to be a little bit more cinematic, like, I don't know what you call it, but I thought there would be more like wide-angle shots of like the landscape that they're going through, things like that, because this is filmed. I think this is filmed in Denmark, and so they have like all the just the natural landscape around them in Holland and the windmills and stuff like that. But there was a lot of just kind of more tighter shots. There was no, so I'm not sure what the reasoning was for that. And I thought the score was just okay. It was just generic. I think it fit in well with the movie, but there wasn't really anything that stood out, which maybe that's a good thing. So that's basically the things I didn't like about it. So if you had to give it a score from 1 to 10, what would you give it, Dakota?
I would definitely give it a 7. It's a solid 7 for me. On Netflix, if for the people that actually gonna probably look it up and watch it, Netflix gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars, which is great for for kind of like an indie horror movie, I guess, because it is kind of indie. I mean, you would think that something that from a small production company would have less stars, but I mean, it was decent on their review and my review for it. That's solid 7 out of 10.
Okay, yeah. So for me, like I said, I love a slasher movie. This is definitely like a standard slasher movie with an interesting mythology created for the killer. The plot was somewhat predictable, while still kind of throwing in some curveballs in there for you. To me, it's not really a complete story. I wish they would have, and what I mean by that is I would have liked to have seen what happened with all the surviving characters. And, the way it ended, I don't know. I wasn't too crazy about it. Anyway, so, but, for a slasher movie, it had a decent body count. It had some really good kills, some good gore. I don't know, the final girl, Jennifer, she was okay. She wasn't like the greatest character, I didn't think, in the movie. That was kind of another thing I felt like you really didn't get attached to a whole lot of the characters in the movie, just because they didn't spend a lot of time developing the characters, but that's fine. The killer had a really cool look to him. So I think this is probably an above average slasher with a few things that kind of hurt it a little bit in my book, but this is a 6 out of 10 for me. I would say definitely check it out on Netflix.
Like, this is odd for me, liking a slasher film. I've never been one to actually like them. I've always been into like the creature features, and I don't see this as a creature feature at all, just because he started off human, obviously. Mm-hmm. And he became this being. So I think it's still a slasher film, and those you're a diehard slasher fan. I mean, so it is kind of off, and some of those diehard slasher fans out there, I saw some reviews online, and they were saying that it's not horror, but there are horror elements. There are horror elements into it, and for those people that say they're diehard slasher movie fans or diehard horror fans, if they're not going to kind of go in, like, I know I'm gonna be a dick about this, but if you people out there that are like I've actually seen this movie, if you guys want to like call me out on this, you can, but I'm gonna tell you right now, it is horror. It's maybe not be scary, but it is horror, because the people who are just starting out watching horror movies, they're gonna see it and they're gonna be like, that was either one of two things. It was gross and freaky, or it was intimidating.
Oh yeah.
And we've always talked about how horror evokes emotion and evokes different feelings, either indifferent or like relative feelings. So I mean, I don't want to. Like I said, I don't want to be a dick, but those people out there that are giving this movie terrible reviews because they hate the fact that it doesn't fit in with their ideals, it just take another look at it. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to think of, like, I've actually heard pretty good things about this from some of the Facebook groups I'm in. Like, people actually really like it. But yeah, I think on IMDb there was a few bad reviews on there, so I'm not sure what kind of standards the people that didn't like it. I'm not sure what kind of standards they're holding this up to, like, because I think it hit all the marks for a good slasher movie, and it hit all the marks for a good horror movie too. And I think it's got something in there for the people who like more of the psychological things. It's got something in there for the slasher fans. It's got stuff in there for the gore hounds. You know, it's a decent flick. I would say it's well worth a watch.
Yeah, and it really does not deserve to be like torn down like it was. But I mean, it really put an effect on me, in which, like I said, I'm really not a slasher fan, but it kind of changed my outlook on it and gave me a different perspective.
Oh,
I
cool.
think part of that came from you too, talking to you and getting your side of it and understanding like where you're coming from and why you like slasher films. So I think that's why I have an appreciation for this movie.
Yeah, and I mean, you've given me, that's cool. I mean, you've definitely given me a greater appreciation of like psychological horror movies as well.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of what we want. We kind of want to bounce things off of each other, and that's kind of what we want to do with our fans and our listeners. We want them to understand that you can't get grounded into one thing because you get in a rut. That's kind of why we did when we started doing earlier on, when we first started doing this together. We did the challenge, the 5-minute Frenzy challenge, is to kind of change the way we view things. Yeah,
no, it was great. I mean, we'll have to maybe start that up again here sometime.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more than willing to do it. I mean, I know we're kind of in this, we're in our road trip thing, but I mean, if there's any ideas for some of our listeners, I do want to open up the floor again to them. If you guys have ideas for a show, or if you guys have ideas for like say that a 5-minute Frenzy, just shout out to us. Let us know. I mean, I'm more than willing to take some ideas. I mean, I know we were talking about how we became a little bit more popular here recently, and I want those people that have just started listening, or the ones that are already currently listening, to kind of go into our podcast or go onto the website, or go onto Facebook, find us on Facebook or anything like that, and tell us what you want. Tell us what you want, because this is not just our show. I mean, this is for everybody.
Yeah, you make a good point. Yeah, I mean, we're definitely out there on social media. You can find us on Twitter at Black Cat Podcast, and also on Facebook, and we're also on Horror Amino as well. I need to really be more active on social media. I'm kind of a slacker in that regard sometimes. And we've got the website www.blackcatshadow.com. And we'd love to hear from you guys, the listeners, because we feel like you're the ones that make this happen. And if we're not doing what you want to, if we're not talking about the things that you want to hear about, then let us know. And also, as we're going through the United States on our road trip before, we'd love to hear, when we get to your state, like, right, we'd love to hear your stories from each state. Like, if we're going to be in your state, like, send us an email. If like your state's coming up, send us an email and let us know some of the good, like, urban legends from your state that you know about. I know the next one is Wyoming, so anybody from Wyoming, let us know if there's some good ghost stories, urban legends, true crime stuff, anything like that. Let us know, because I feel like, and even if you want to be on the show with us, that would be great. I think stories from actual people living in these states would just make it that much better. Because a lot of times we can do research, but sometimes it's hard to know, like, which urban legends or stories or things that you guys have actually grown up hearing and are familiar with. So we hope that we're doing a good job of picking out ones that are interesting, ones that make you want to learn more about your own state or other people's states. I even had, we talked about Dave earlier. He told me on Twitter, our show is making them want to travel around the country. So that's pretty cool. Hearing feedback like that is another reason, why we do it. We love to to hear that people are enjoying what we're doing. So, yeah, hit us up with your stories, with your feedback, with your show ideas. We really appreciate it. Our email, I almost forgot about that, is blackcatpodcast@gmail.com. So you can shoot us an email there, and we'll get back to you, let you know. And, yeah, anything else, Dakota? Oh, yeah. So, yeah, go ahead. Let people know how they can get a hold of you if they'd like to.
Yeah, guys, just please email me. I know a lot of people don't use email. I'm considering opening up my private Skype line. That way people can message me on Skype if they really are that desperate. I know I'm starting to get desperate because I've only ever gotten one email from a fan, and it was just them giving me a quick little review of just about me, and that's kind of what's changed my view about some things too. I mean, as Andy said, it's like if without the fans, we wouldn't do this at all. I mean, we see how we love doing this, but I mean, we love the people that listen to us. I guess it's more fan service, but if you guys want to get a hold of me, just reach out to me on my email, daxshadowbane@gmail.com. Just look for me. I'll spell out my email because I don't think I've been spelling it out. It's just DAK Shadow Bane, BANE. It's all one word. Just email me your ideas, feedback, anything. I'll even talk to you about the weather. I don't care. I just want to know. I just want to know where our listeners are coming from. I know we have a few listeners in Europe, which I think this movie is gonna, if it gets around over there. I know this movie was very popular in London, and I know it was very popular in where it was based in the Netherlands. So, I guess, yeah, just reach out to me. I don't care where you're from. Just reach out to me and we'll talk. And I may even mention you on the podcast. I don't know if I like the conversation.
So yeah, tune in for our next episode 25, where we're going to be talking about Wyoming. So that should be interesting. So remember, guys, to take a closer look at the world around you, and you may just find that it is stranger and more mysterious than you thought, especially in the Black Cat's shadow.